All right, so it came out over the weekend. I was thinking that LSU had to beat Florida. I didn't think they had a shot, and they got the big victory this past weekend. So I'm thinking he lives another day.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we found out yesterday that LSU is fired Ed Orgeron. But it's effective immediately, but he's going to stay the rest of the year. Now, if you know Ed Orgeron, he is 9-8 overall since they won the national title. Won 15-0 with Joe Burrow, and of course, the great offensive coordinator Brady as OC. And certainly not good. They were 5-5 last year. We kind of wrote that off because of the COVID year, and this year they're 4-3. Then, of course, there were some other things that were involved there, too, including, of course, the sexual harassment case, the Title IX case. There was his running back Juice, who evidently assaulted a particular woman, and he kind of looked the other way, and depending on who you ask, he said he talked to her and asked him to apologize. She said he never called, blah, 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 blah. It went back and forth. And, again, the sad thing that this is to me is that if Ed Orgeron was 6-1 or 7-0 right now, I'm not so sure he's being fired because this stuff was months ago.
Right. We've talked
all
about
that stuff's starting to crop back up. We're trying to go, okay, what else can we add into this black file to ensure that we can fire him? By the way, he's going to make $17 million in his payout because he's got 5 more years left in his contract. These stinking agents in college football are brilliant.
Yeah.
Gus Malzahn got that big fat deal. I mean,
right.
And he signed this contract in 2020. I'm like, how in the world do you get a 5-year extension? It's amazing. He'll be given a $17.8 million buyout following his 5-year departure. His mishandling of the sexual misconduct claims against his players. There was also something with the NCAA where they self-imposed a 1-year ban because several of his players got paid on the side, given jobs. Of course, now with the NIL thing, it doesn't really matter. Now everyone's got that.
You got to keep your house clean, man.
And I'm trying to think coaches who have won national titles, Gene Chizik, Coker down in Miami, guys who were up here, won Coach of the Year numerous times. I mean, he won everything when they won the national title a couple years ago, 15-0. Great fit, sound like a Cajun, coon ass, was a Cajun. People loved him.
Yeah.
I remember when they hired him.
Like
he was at Ole Miss. He was out at USC.
Yeah.
Then I'm going, okay, he's finally found his spot.
Yeah.
God timing thing.
Yep.
Perfect. And now here we are 2 years later, and quite frankly, I'm not saying he won't get rehired somewhere else. I think he's 60. But he was just good for the game, had that voice, and they loved him, but they're just not playing for him. They're just not playing for him.
That's like right? So that's like getting hired into a company. You look like you're the perfect fit on so many levels. You know, you embrace the culture. You look like you fit in there. You're a great brand ambassador for the corporation. So they bring you in as head of whatever, sales, marketing, whatever. There's the honeymoon period, right? Well, you're just getting your feet under you, so whatever. But after a while, look, if you don't deliver, we've talked about this, in particular in sports. If you don't deliver on the job, then people take a step back, and then they're starting to think, well, what else? You know, what else? What redeeming qualities? Mm-hmm. Well, you don't deliver, and there's been 3 reports to HR.
Yep.
Okay, then we're like, yeah, but because we got a little buyer's remorse. We invested all this money, and we're going to give them more time. And like you said, as your ability to drive the company bottom line goes down, then all the bad stuff comes up, and you do reach a point where, you see this in organizations all the time. What's the argument for keeping them on? Well,
there's not one. Scott Woodward, who, of course, the AD, wrote a write to you today. This was yesterday to let you know that LSU head coach, football coach Ed Orgeron will not be returning for the 2022 season. For my first day as LSU's director of athletics, Coach O and I have maintained an open and consistent dialogue regarding the state of LSU football. His passion and pride for a football team and for our state are unrivaled and undeniable. And even when faced with this difficult news, he still wants the best for the Tigers above all else. I have asked him, and he has agreed to remain as head coach through the end of the 2021 season, which tells me
what?
That they're firing because the quality of their program is not where it needs to be from a win-loss situation. Because if this had anything to do with the sexual misconduct or the paying of players, he'd be fired immediately and out the door.
That's right.
They're basically saying, okay, that was not right, that was wrong, but that's not enough for us to fire you. Which I think may be sending the wrong message. Because
I agree.
If that is part of why they're firing you, in other words, if there wasn't sexual misconduct in the Title IX and the situation with the players being paid and being put on a probation, and he was 4-3 and 9-8 since the national championship, would he still be coach? I don't know that answer. I will say this: the Nick Sabans of the world, and there's only one. I'll say the Nick Saban of the world has set this standard now that, quite frankly, is not attainable by most. And I know he lost a game last year.
From a win-loss? You mean from win-loss?
Just from a consistency standpoint.
Yeah.
It does not. I know he doesn't win a national championship every year, but consistency in that program has just been unbelievable. When you see Alabama win a national title and what they lose 3 or 4 coaches a year. They lose 10 or 15 players to the NFL, and they come back and they're just as good as they were the year before. He certainly made an argument. Listen, we lost Joe Burrow, we lost Brady, we lost 3 assistants, we lost this, we had to bring Bo Pelini in, blah, 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 blah. And then they have an off year. And you're seeing that with Clemson right now, with Trevor Lawrence. I don't think Dabo Sweeney's going anywhere time soon.
No.
But they had a booger bear again this weekend. It just makes you, I think they just got lightning in a bottle that year at LSU, and I think they had all the pieces. They beat 7 AP top 10 teams by double digits. I mean, this team was unbelievable. It was one of the greatest college football teams I've ever seen. And so you're expected, because of recruiting, to bring those things in. What did not jazz with the athletic director and for the fan base is the eye test.
Yeah.
I could sit there and watch LSU, and I was pleasantly surprised how hard they fought this week against Florida. I don't know if they knew before the game that he was gone. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But they looked uninspired the first 6 games of the year. For some reason, they looked better. Maybe it's because they get an early lead. They held on for dear life to win that football game. Not a good loss for Dan Mullen. But you can look at the eye test. Do they look like they want to play? Do they look like they want to be there? And they did this past weekend. So
I think that, listen, that is the difference. I just keep thinking about the parallels. You know, any good organization at any level can have a great year. You know, if you got, as long as once you get up to a certain level, and let's talk SEC football is a great example. For the most part, most of the teams could have a great year. Mm-hmm. Maybe even a championship year. Yep. But that doesn't, but again, then the question is from an organizational standpoint, how stable are you? How stable is the infrastructure of the organization so that after your great year, maybe the next year is not as great, but you're not going up and down.
Yep.
So you don't want up and down, and you also don't want, I mean, that the thing about up and down is it almost feels better, because if you do great one year and you kind of tank the next year, we're rebuilding. We're in the middle of raising capital, or fine. It's when you start at the top and then the next year's not so good, and then the next year's not so good, and you don't even have to get progressively worse. You just don't come back up.
Yeah.
And again, you look at Alabama football.
But when and to your point, when you're talking about college football, though, your employees are only staying for 2 or 3 years.
That's right.
And so as you continually bring those new guys in, you don't rebuild, you reload. And Alabama does that every single year. Clemson, for the most part, has done that every single year. Ohio State does that every single year. LSU needs to do that every year. And you look at how many 5-star players they got, and they're not playing like 5-star players. You're not wrong on that many recruits. So something inside's wrong. Something's going on. He's lost his team, so it continues.
No, so I think again, I always like to put this to the business world. You can have the right technology, you can have the right people on paper, right? Oh my God, this guy was an EVP over here, and this young person coming out of Harvard, and we get all the thing, and it's not working. And it's really interesting, because this is some of the work that I do. On paper, it's like the 5-star recruits. This should work, damn it. It should work. And there's a lot of times where it's not just that, you look, the guys who play for LSU, to say that as a team they're uninspired, I don't believe that. I mean, you don't come in and you're just don't play hard. What happens is it's that whole meshing. It's that working together, because you see this in companies. You can have a division that's got super talented people. They're not producing because they're not complementing each other. They're not, either their skills don't complement each other, right? You got too many of this, none of this, or they don't know how to work well together consistently. Anybody can come into a job on any given day, and I can, hate your ass or not get along with you, but you and we can pull it off for a day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can we pull it off for a year?
Yeah.
No. Radio, season, ratings, it's the same thing. And this is this is why Alabama football is really a template. You got a lot of businesses looking at Alabama football now and going, what is it that Nick Saban does? He's got a stable infrastructure. Of course, he's got the money, but he's successful, so they're bringing the money in. But he's a stable infrastructure from a culture standpoint.
Yeah.
So you're constantly bringing in the right people.
And I wonder, too, I wonder why he's staying the season. And I wonder why they asked him to stay the rest of the season. Obviously.
Stability?
It's not stability. How's that going to help your recruiting when the coach that's going to be there right now is going to be there for another 5 or 6 games through the rest of this particular season? I've always wondered.
What do you think it is?
If you're resigning or you're retiring, I get it. You work the year out. But if they fired your ass after Game 7 and then he's going to stay the rest of the year, why? Put an assistant in there. Was he
fired or does he?
He's fired.
Yeah, okay.
He was fired, and they said, we're going to fire you.
But we're going to let you
now, but we'd like you to stay to the end of the football year, and he agreed. So I don't. Obviously, it's a good thing for him because it obviously looks like maybe they've had a difference of philosophies, and obviously he's not winning football games like he needs to at LSU. But so he's got another 4 or 5 games. We saw that. Didn't we see that at USC when he took over as interim coach, and he had a hell of a. He ran like 4 or 5 games off the road.
But he took over. What happens if we fire you and then you run the table? Like we change our mind?
Well, they've still lost 3 games. It's not going to. It's not going to matter if he ends up going 8-3. I don't know. It's just really weird that if we're going to fire you for all of these things, including of course the sexual discrimination case and all those things, and so obviously that's not the straw that broke the camel. It must just be the wins and losses. Or else we would cut loose, right?
Maybe we don't have anybody?
And then this is a guy who took over for who? Les Miles. We don't know what happened to him. So I'm kind of like, all of a sudden LSU is going like, Les Miles, national champion, leaves, quirky, eating grass, goes to Kansas, and next thing you know, he's fired for stuff. Yep. LSU just sounds like a hot breeding ground for sexual misconduct. But
this is a great company that didn't have the right stuff in place. They need a reorg. This is the reorg. Yeah. We're going away. We're not going away, but again, in football, it's different. It's Tennessee. It's not Tennessee, but it's Tennessee. We kept waiting. We keep waiting. Tennessee. And now the question with LSU is, are you going to see the same thing? Is it going to be, we had this we had this in Alabama. It wasn't like Alabama's not been this, it didn't go from Bear Bryant to Nick Saban. Mm-hmm. We had periods where it was up and down. And that's what I'm saying is I think that you have to have an organization, and it takes time to build it up. It's easy to bring it down if you don't have the pieces in place to keep the right people coming. Like, again, you talk about a fast turnover. Fast food is a good example. Mm-hmm. Right? Turnover all the time. We don't keep the people there for years and years and years, but we have a system to make sure that the people we bring in, Chick-fil-A is a great example.
Yep.
Right? At Chick-fil-A, people are turnover all the time, but we know the people coming in. We know the kind of people. What?
Not much turnover at Chick-fil-A.
That's true, actually. But I think that's, and again, other coaches, it's not that they don't know this, but I do think Nick Saban has found a way, and it becomes reputation. This is going to keep going in Alabama until one of 2 things happen. Alabama starts losing, which they could, even with Nick Saban. They could go from almost championship every year. There could be a decrease to the point, or when Nick Saban retires.
Yeah.
When he retires, then whatever comes in, there's going to be that, like, they need to go away a little bit. and then they come back up. I mean, John Wooden, and like you said, you never want to be the guy or gal coming in afterwards.
Yeah. You want to be the next guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know if LSU, I would assume it'd be certainly a top 10 job.
Bill Clark.
I'd say some people are saying Lane Kiffin. I mean,
Lane Kiffin.
Dude, Lane Kiffin's
He's been everywhere.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I mean, is LSU a better job than Ole Miss? Yeah.
That's true.
You know?
Lane Kiffin's got quite the portfolio.
He really does.
Did he go? This is where your expertise. Walk me through Lane Kiffin's coaching career.
I don't even know if I could. I mean, he's been all over the place.
How many times was he in the NFL? Once?
Once he was in, obviously, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Alabama.
Florida.
Florida. Yeah, he's been. I mean, it was just a matter of time before he ended up getting the big job, but I don't know if Ole Miss is his dream job.
So you think LSU?
You know what would be a great fit to me, I think, is, and again, I don't know if he's got the resources or the leverage to make it happen. For some reason, Lane Kiffin at Miami just sounds like a great fit to me.
Yeah.
I think he's a Florida guy. I think that's why he took the Florida job in the first place. I think he likes the heat. I think him in Miami and Manny Diaz, Miami's horrible. I just think it's got a lot of loyalty and a lot of pedigree there. I just think that I may be totally wrong there. And I again, when you bring a guy in and he's about 2 or 3 years at each job he's at, you don't expect him to stay.
Who are they bringing in for LSU?
I have no clue. I have no idea. And there's articles out all this morning about the next head coach at LSU.
And how long will Coach Leach be at Mississippi State?
Oh, you know what?
Does he have enough of a reputation?
I think the fact that Dan Mullen left there to go take another job inside the same conference tells you what kind of job Mississippi State is. You got Mike Leach, who's a 2-time Coach of the Year.
Right.
It's there, and I think they're happy to have him there. I think they like him because he's a little ornery, a little off. He just needs, and he beat LSU. He just needs to have 8-win seasons on a consistent basis.
Yes.
Can he do that at Mississippi State? I don't know. I don't see. I mean, you have to understand though, because he was recruiting pretty decent. When he was in Pullman, and it's kind of like, okay, to recruit in Pullman is kind of like
you got something.
It's amazing. You must be doing something well. Now that he's got the money to go out and get some assistants that he actually wants,
right?
That he can actually pay because you're in the SEC. Was this the second or third year? I don't know how many years have been there. I should know that, but
yeah. But so again, this is nothing against Coach Leach because we love him, but is this the big fish, smaller pond, now big fish, gigantic pond?
Yeah.
Well,
and even he said when you get in the SEC, it gets real.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not that he's a bad coach,
yeah.
But at Pullman, you're like, look at him, look what he's doing over there.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say it's like Conference USA, but it has that kind of but now it's the SEC. And is it's always the same thing. Is it Coach Leach or is it Coach Leach who's building, who comes in? You see this in companies all the time. They bring in the new CEO and the market wants you to turn that stuff around like that. Come on. The venture, it's interesting because if it's a publicly traded company, they want that stock going up.
Yeah.
If there's venture capital behind it, they're giving you some runway. They're like, okay, look, here's $20 million. We know that year one we're not expecting you to do anything in year one. Year two, we want you to see you kind of did this, and then by year three, we want you to hit the ground running. So it's interesting for Mike Leach. What are the expectations?
Yeah, well, and the argument is his style of football. Can he adapt?
Right.
He did the air raid. He wrote the book.
Right.
It worked where he was at. Now you're in the SEC. That's known as now it's evolved quite a bit too.
I was going to say
but I mean it's a defensive-minded type of school. We're not going to allow you to throw the ball 70 times a game. You can't win games in the SEC by doing that. He's won a couple, but he hasn't done that consistently yet. So I want to see him adapt and change. If he's going to be stodgy and stick to his air raid, and he doesn't even do the air raid thing anymore, he taught a college class on it.
Yeah,
and sticks to it and somehow figure it out. He's a brilliant mind. He's a brilliant, and his kids play hard for him. So, but it's still Mississippi State. So we'll see what happens.